Electric vehicles are inevitable. They are part of life. It's like change. They will happen at some point. And some EVs are a little bit on the boring side, some even look boring. But thankfully, there is still an EV that is not only fun, but also looks pretty damn good. This is the 2024 Hyundai IONIQ 5 in the long-range two-wheel drive, the top-of-line version. Let's take a look at this car, which has over 450 kilometers of range on a single charge. Now let's get the important bits down first. You can get the IONIQ 5 in two variants. A standard range, which Hyundai claims can go 384 kilometers in a single charge, or this long-range variant which we have here, which is claimed to have a range of 451 kilometers. That, in practice, is also very much doable if you meet certain conditions. But for your day-to-day driving in Metro Manila, where it's very traffic, realistic range is around 436 kilometers. Still not a bad thing. Now we'll talk about the charging and how long it takes later on once we get to the charging port, which is pretty cool. Now with those important info down, let's talk about how this car looks. Well, look over at the front and you have a clamshell hood. This entire front end looks very futuristic, something you'd see right out of Cyberpunk or Blade Runner or even Back to the Future. And there's a particular detail here which makes it look more like that. And now if you look at your headlamps, they're called parametric pixel type LEDs, and I don't know, it just looks really good. Since it's an electric vehicle and you don't really need a grille, what you have instead is a piano black piece by the center, which just looks oh so clean, and it also houses your front camera. Now, what about your AC system? How is it supposed to suck air for your aircon? Well, if you look down below, there is a flap that opens up when you turn on your AC system. Move towards the side of the car and you might ask me, so what exactly is the IONIQ 5? Is it a hatchback or is it a compact or mid-size even crossover SUV? Now, Hyundai says that this is officially a crossover SUV, and you might not notice it at first, but with the ground clearance of 163 millimeters, it definitely is. And remember, since it is an electric car with sealed batteries down below, this has a higher weighting depth in theory compared to its ICE counterparts with similar amounts of ground clearance. Best thing here that will definitely stand out are your pop-out door handles. On top, you even have a panoramic sunroof, which Hyundai calls the Vision Roof, which gives you a black roof effect too. Now, take a look at your rims right here. Massive, right? 20 inches for this long-range variant. Go for the standard range variant, you get 19s. And these are also wrapped in Michelin Pilot Sport EV tires. Now let's look at the rear of the IONIQ 5, and the parametric pixel LEDs continue here. If anything, they remind me of that stack game you play on Time Zone where it goes, oh no, if you mess up and go, yeah, that looks exactly like this. But yeah, that just looks so good because it runs the entire width of this rear. Being an electric vehicle, of course, you don't have any exhaust down below. Now let's open up this tailgate, and it is powered too for this long-range variant. And what you'll see is a cavernous boot area. It's not deep in terms of the height of it, but it really is wide and it goes further into the car, and you can also fold down those seats 60/40. Now, where do you store your slow charger, portable charger? Well, it's just down under here, which we'll take out now. And it just looks like this. So every purchase of the IONIQ 5 will come with this, as well as a wall box, a slightly faster version of this that you connect to your home. Now, whoop, okay, bear with me here. So this is now how you charge it. You come up here to the passenger side. There's this flap here with a pixel icon. You simply press that icon and this thing folds up electrically. Pretty cool, right? So all you need to do is plug this in, and there you go. You can now charge up your car using the slow charging process. And this one can charge your car from 85% to 100% in only about 7 hours. And given that you don't really consume too much on a daily basis, it's gonna be just like charging your phone on a nightly basis. Every time you go home, you just charge it up. To give some context, this car can go from Tomas Morato in Quezon City to Makati and only use around 3% of your battery. go from Tomas Morato all the way to Alabang and you'd only consume about 7% of your battery. That's how efficient this car is. So really, just make it a habit to charge this every time you get home. It's that quick. If you need to fast charge this car too, you can simply go to malls like SM Mega Mall or Podium and you can easily charge this up and it's going to be so much faster. But the best part about this car is that hopefully one day, once we get super fast chargers in the Philippines that can go 350 kilowatt outputs, you can charge this from 10% to 80% in only 18 minutes. And if you use that same 350 kilowatt charger, you can get up to 111 kilometers of range in just 5 minutes. Amazing, isn't it? Now let's talk about the hood of the IONIQ 5. And as you open it up, first of all, you get hood struts and you don't even have a hood pad because it doesn't really produce any sort of heat here over at the front. So you don't need a hood pad. And you basically have a Porsche 911 when you have an IONIQ 5 because you have a front trunk, and that is only for storage. And while this car may not have a traditional ICE or internal combustion engine, for tradition's sake, let's talk about the power figures here. So battery-wise, 72.6 kilowatt hours located under your floors. Power figures, 217 horsepower and 350 Newton meters of torque. Transmission, well, you don't really have one with gears, so you only have like a gear reduction system since it is electric. And yes, you might say that 217 horsepower and 350 Newton meters of torque isn't much given the size and weight of this vehicle. You're absolutely right. Yes, on paper, but you'll see later on in the driving segment just how amazing this car is to drive because remember, you have all that instant torque instantly. Okay, now for my favorite thing about the IONIQ 5, it's the interior. Just take a listen to this. That sounds really, really good, right? And what I love about this really is the open concept that you have. It just feels so spacious in here. And I have a feeling it's because the leather here is all in white and even the headliner, everything is just in white, right? And these, by the way, are eco-processed leather together with your bio paint on the outside. So this is all as eco-friendly as it goes. Now, speaking of the leather in these seats, these are heated and cooled. So many power adjustments for the driver's side. You even have 2 setting memory functions right there. And you even have an ottoman, which you can raise up. Just take a look at this. Like at first, I didn't really understand why you would need an ottoman or how that is even safe. But this is also good if, for example, you're waiting for your car to charge and you want to relax because these are called the relaxation seats. You can just lounge on about right here. Now, just a disclaimer, this particular test unit is not a local version of the IONIQ 5. I believe that's like a Korea spec, but it is pretty similar. However, the local spec is even better because the local spec even has that same ottoman for the passenger side, right? But only for this long range trip. Anyway, the rest of the interior, you get pretty good materials in here. So you get so much soft touch materials by the dashboard, on the side, and even your headliner. Feel that? There's a lot of padding right there. But there are still some places with plastics like here and here, but these are all very high quality feeling plastics, so you're not going to get any sort of creaking inside here. Even all your levers right here, they just feel oh so high quality. Truly an amazing interior. Now, you have 2 screens in this, 12.3 inches big, and this center infotainment screen even comes with Apple CarPlay, although it is wired though. And you also get a 360-degree view camera right there, and you can view all sorts of EV related stuff, your range, how it changes as you use different driving modes and whatnot. Now, for your steering wheel, it's pretty odd because as much as the wheel is this very traditional 2-spoke steering wheel, you don't get any sort of Hyundai emblem by the center. So all you have here are like 4 dots. Is that supposed to represent IONIQ? Perhaps so. And 4 dots means fully charged, right? But you also have buttons here for your adaptive cruise control because this car has so much advanced driver assistance systems. Again, including adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, lane keeping assist with edge detection. We'll talk about that later, among others. Finally, there's even this drive mode selection switch here. And it's very Ferrari or Lamborghini-like, and this is where you configure between your eco, normal, and sport. Plus, speaking of that too, you have these paddle shifters at the back which control your regenerative braking, and as to why that's related to eco, comfort, and sport, you'll also find that out in the driving segment later on. Now, let's move on to a very interesting thing about the IONIQ, and it's its shifter. You know how in some Mercedes cars starting from like the early 2010s, you have a shifter that you push down and what here? It's like a stalk, right? This one has a stalk too, but you don't push it down or anything. It's just a twisting. So forward for drive, reverse for, well, reverse and P to park it. Now, moving to the center, that is very, complicated looking capacitive screen for your AC system. And first, it's confusing, but you easily get used to it. Remember how I said there's an open console? Well, just look at the space I have here. If they made this car a 6-seater and even added a center seat over here, I mean, it's definitely doable. I'm gonna try to do this. Look at the amount of space you have here. You know those old high Aces where there's this like third seat by the center, but you barely had any feet space? Well, this one, you can definitely do this. So Hyundai, come on, give us a 6-seater version of the IONIQ 5. Look at this entire center area. 2 cup holders, you have a wireless charging pad, so much space. You want to put a woman's handbag in there, definitely doable. You want to put it here, doable as well. Charging ports, 2 USB ports right here, and another one right there, plus a 12-volt, 180-watt charger. And let's move a little bit lower, right? Over at the sides, you have Bose speakers. For this long-range variant, you have ambient lighting, which is also configurable. You have that vision roof, panoramic sunroof on top. And this one, I've never seen this in any car. I mean, I believe all cars should have this. Glove box, does it go all the way down? No, it does something else. Watch this. You pull it out. Every single car should have that, truly. And now for the second row of seats, of course, we also check the door first. Okay, that's kind of weird. Usually the rear doors sound a little bit better. For this one, there's a lot of echo going on. I think the front doors are heavier. Now, instead of me talking about how spacious this place is, let me just, demonstrate it for you. Watch this. This is my driving position. See, that's how much space there is in here. So that takes care of legroom, but what about headroom? So you have this vario roof thing, right? Vision roof thing. And yet, yeah, headroom is still pretty good. If you're probably like 5'11" or 6, that could be slightly limited, but otherwise you're fine. Not much Filipinos are 6 feet tall, right? So I should feel better about my 5'6" tall. Anyway, right here again, yeah, the feet space is pretty good. Sitting 3 people here too, definitely great because you have a flat floor, no transmission tunnel. Just move about here and it is pretty wide too. Now, for your toys, well, you have this very cool B-pillar mounted air vent, right? So think the S-Class, think pretty much any Volvo out there. So that gives off a premium touch. You have the center armrest too with 2 cup holders. You have 2 USB-A ports down there, and you can also recline this, which truly makes this a very executive-like car. But you know what else makes it more executive? Not only do you get privacy glass, which is like factory slightly tinted, but you even have these privacy shades right here. There you go. So this car is great both for the driver as well as the passengers. So now we drive the Hyundai IONIQ 5 long-range 2-wheel drive. And driving this car is just tons of fun. And honestly, this is the problem with these electric vehicles. The biggest factor to your range isn't even how big your battery is. It's pretty much you as a person because you're gonna have a little bit too much fun with it. You see, this car may only have like 200 plus horsepower or so, but it feels much faster than that. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour can be done in 7.4 seconds. And yes, that is true. It does do it in 7.4 seconds. But because the very moment you step on this, you just zoom forward and your initial 0 to 40 or 50 kilometers per hour or so is just so fast. It feels much faster than 7.4 seconds. It really feels that everything comes at an instant. And that is, of course, because you don't have anything having to spool up, right? But yeah, it's just crazy fun. This car may not look too sporty. It might just look futuristic and probably boring even to some people because it does look like a hatchback. I assure you it is a very fun car to drive. With the IONIQ 5, you can configure your amount of regenerative braking. You can go from level 0 all the way down to the I pedal, and that is controlled via your paddle shifters. And the best way to explain how each one of those settings feel is the more regenerative braking you go, the closer you get to the single pedal function, which is the max regen mode. It just feels a little bit heavier. The car just feels a little bit heavier. If you have it in level 0, for example, the car just feels so light, you can cruise on about. It's like you're driving a performance car really. But when you put it into I pedal, you feel like you're driving this eco-friendly
speed demon still. It's something like that. Now, also speaking of this iPedal, the single pedal driving, it really is just so comfortable to use. It takes probably like, I don't know, less than 5 minutes to get used to it. But once you get used to it, you really don't see yourself ever almost stepping at that brake pedal. So not only does that give you extra charge in form of regenerative braking, but it also saves you on maintenance costs because you use your brake pads less. There is a little bit of a downside though to that iPedal thing, and that is once you come to a complete stop, which by the way you can with it, it has this tendency of kind of just rolling forward and then going back and into this weird pendulum motion. It only lasts for like a second or two, but if you're someone who gets nauseated often, that second or two feel of movement, it feels kind of weird. Yeah, so again, it's just something that you have to get used to. Let's move now on to the handling, and you would expect a big and heavy electric vehicle to not handle well, right? Well, you're wrong, because just like a lot of electric cars that have their batteries located down below, on the floors, under the floors that is, you have this sensation of a very low center of gravity, and that really does pay off when you are pushing this car over bends and corners because it remains incredibly flat. And now you couple that with an extremely well-built chassis, a well-tuned suspension that's a little bit slightly on the firm side, and you have a car that still handles well. But again, just like a lot of EVs whose batteries are located down below there, you also have this feeling that the bottommost part of the car is a lot more rigid. It wants to turn way more than the rest of the body. So yeah, that's just something, again, that you do have to get used to. It's a little bit of a different sensation compared to when you're just driving a regular ICE vehicle. Noise, vibration, and harshness suppression, well, that is a big cherry on top for the IONIQ 5. Obviously for noise, it's so quiet because you don't have any engine running, right? But it's not just that. Even when you're traveling at very high speeds, the insulation all around the cabin is just top notch. So it's just so quiet in here. If you've rode or driven S-classes in the past, I mean, this is a little bit blasphemous to say, but really, I might even say that it's quieter than some S-classes out there. I've driven Rolls Royces in the past, you know, with those big 6 3/4 liter V12s, and yes, they were quiet, but this is quiet too. This is about as quiet as those. Kind of ridiculous to say, but yeah, that truly is the reality. Vibrations, what do you expect? There's no engine that will vibrate, so vibrations is virtually zero. And for harshness, yes, the suspension's a little bit on the firm side, but it really doesn't hurt in any way. It's not too firm. You want to use this on the highway, it remains very stable because of that firm suspension, but at the same time, inside the city, even in Manila roads, it really is very much usable. This has an active lane keeping assist function which you can use even in low speeds. And the best part about it is, you know how usually it has to follow the lane markings? So in case there's no lane markings and you're in a tight street, there's only the edges, like the sidewalk, that it can read, as well as the cars parked on the other side. Well, for this one, it can also read those, which is very interesting. It just makes it really, really safe, even for our horrible, substandardly painted roads of Metro Manila. Since we're on the topic of advanced driver assistance systems, let's talk about its adaptive cruise control. It is so smooth on the highway and even inside the city, and it even comes with a stop and go function and will smoothly apply your brakes or your regenerative brakes for you. You also have like this blind spot monitoring system camera, right? So every time you turn on your signal on either direction, it's gonna show a camera right there on your digital instrument cluster. And it is set up so well and it is so clear that it helps you really see a lot of those sweet potato riders if they wanna, for some reason, cut you and overtake you as you're turning into an intersection. Finally, let's talk about the factors that really do affect your range. So first and foremost, the biggest thing that I've seen would be your AC system. When it's off, you get around 30 plus additional kilometers of range on a single charge. And every time you put the fan up by just one fan up setting, it decreases anywhere between 5 to 13 kilometers of your range. That's honestly quite ridiculous. Your ventilated seats, that really doesn't affect your range, which is pretty cool. And in case you go into your infotainment screen and tap driver only, which means only the driver side gets any sort of air and it cuts off the passenger side, you also get a little bit more range with that. Also, your driving mode settings tend to affect it a lot. So if you put this into eco, normal, or sport, you get varying ranges. Eco obviously gives you the most amount of range, while sport gives you the least. And it doesn't matter if you put this car into sport mode and you drive it ecoli, the trip computer just tells you that, hey, the fact that you're in eco or the fact that you're in sport mode, you are gonna lose a lot of range.
So let's give the Hyundai IONIQ 5 a verdict. But first, its pricing. You can get this car for 3,698,000 pesos, at least for this long-range variant. If you go for the standard range variant, you're looking at slightly below 3.1 million pesos. And let's talk about its pros and cons. Pros, it looks absolutely amazing. It's very futuristic. It's also very sporty and damn, looks like a spaceship. Next pro would be it drives amazingly too, and it's so comfortable, and you never have to pay for gas. Oh, also, you're exempted from number coding at least for the next 8 years. And I even forgot to mention one thing. The IONIQ 5 even comes with a V2L function, or a vehicle to load function, wherein just in case you get a blackout at home, this car can function as a ginormous power bank for your entire house. So that truly is cool. As for cons, the only thing I can think of would be the fact that it costs 3.698 million pesos. So it's a little bit prohibitive for some people. But with those in mind, if you have 3,698,000 pesos, all I can tell you now is just go right ahead and reserve one. Or if it's available, just go right ahead and buy one. Because as for 2023, or end of 2023, this is by far the best and most exciting car that I have driven.